Chapter 1. Pearl sighed as she tossed another pile of clothes haphazardly onto the bed. She stopped packing for a moment to glance around at the mostly barren room. It was only a few years ago that she had moved into this apartment, but it felt much longer, and she didn't recall ever seeing it this empty. She cleared out another drawer of socks from her dresser before looking around again. The dresser and bed were the last things to go, but she knew she would have to empty the drawers to be able to lift it. Combined with the clothes left in the closet, it meant another suitcase or two full of garments to be carried out before she could finally finish. Why do I own so many clothes? Pearl muttered to herself as she tried to zip part of the suitcase shut. It was far overstuffed, and the bulging pockets ensured she wouldn't be able to close it properly. After a few stubborn minutes of struggling with the zipper, she sighed in defeat and slid it across the floor. She wanted to stop for the day, but she knew she would need all day tomorrow to move the heavy furniture out, and that could be postponed. It didn't show, but she was excited to be finally moving. The apartment was one bedroom and one bathroom and had all she needed to live, but it was cramped and uncomfortable. She knew it was holding her back from moving on to bigger and better things. She thought for a while before deciding to take a brief break. Pearl spent longer than she intended on her break, staring out the window. She imagined vivid landscapes of rolling hills carpeted with a spectrum of violet and red wildflowers, and dotted with lumbering oak trees, in a secluded neighborhood where she wouldn't have such loud neighbors. The constant droning of nearby traffic would be replaced with melodic song of birds calling back and forth, and each hour would bring in new songs as different species came and went. She watched a pedestrian walking by and imagined them as a white-tailed deer peeking from the bush, only to quickly retreat into the unseen thick of the forest. In her mind, she gazed up at a sky that was more auburn than blue, one that was ever shifting in color as the sun slowly set behind a mosaic of endless tree branches. As the color would drain into the horizon of endless, uninterrupted flora, the stars would appear clear in a stunning display of overhead lights. 20 minutes had passed, and Pearl returned her gaze to the room around her. To her chagrin, the rest of the clothes had not packed themselves into the suitcase while she was daydreaming. She stood up again to get her blood flowing. 6 more drawers remained unpacked, and the daunting task pushed her to flee the task at hand and begin working on the closet. The door of the closet creaked loudly as Pearl tried to slide it open fully. It broke off the hinges and collapsed on the floor, and she pushed on it too hard to force it past the usual sticking point. "God damn it!" Pearl muttered. She mostly wore the clothes in her dresser and used the closet for storage. She couldn't remember the last time she had actually opened the door all the way, which would explain why she just cracked it off the wall like it was being supported by a couple toothpicks and a piece of Scotch tape. Pearl stepped over the collapsed door frame and into the closet. She was amazed to see how many more clothes she owned. She pawed through several dozen shirts hanging from the metal rod with haste as she scanned through them. Her eyes flicked back and forth through it all, a few dresses here, a couple graphic tees there, a shirt with one sleeve on it, and a shirt with a cartoon toaster on the front. Some were vaguely familiar, but most seemed completely random, as though she was seeing them for the first time in her life. What in the holy hell are half of these? Where are they coming from? Pearl began to pick up and toss out a lot of the shirts, making her way to the back of the rack as she pushed through some of the larger hanging garments. She tossed back a couple tacky dresses and a full suit that she didn't know she owned. She was nearly ready to give up and go on break again, simply overwhelmed with the amount of work still left to be done, when something in the very back of the closet caught her eye. A pair of disembodied eyes seemed to be staring back at her from the door. Blinking, Pearl stared for a moment as her brain tried to process what she was seeing as the oddly unsettling sight instilled a sense of minor panic in her. "What is that?" she whispered, finally taking a step forward to reach it. Her hand wrapped around one of the eyes, and she took relief in realizing it was just plastic. She gave a tug to pick it up, but was surprised to feel something restraining it. Pulling with both hands, she inched it out a bit from the dark green comforter that was on top of it, and she began to see what she was looking at. She pushed the comforter back and unveiled the rest of a dinosaur costume. The dark green of the plush material had blended perfectly with the bedding that had been largely burying it. Pearl let go of the eyes and lifted it up from the small yellow spikes that lined the hood that had been connecting the eyes to the rest of the costume. It seemed to be a onesie with a simple zipper that ran part way down the front. Pearl pulled it fully out of the closet, entertained with her new find, and gasped as the reptilian tail swung out with it. "Oh my god, what is this from? This is the coolest!" she exclaimed, turning it around to examine it all over. There were no feet attached to the costume, but as soon as Pearl realized this, she noticed a pair of boots in the closet she hadn't seen before. They were a definite match, as they were made from the same material with the same color and even had a similar reptilian look. She put them on the floor together and held the onesie over them to see the full look of the costume. A sudden feeling of dread came over her, just a split second, as though an energy were projected from it before it quickly dissipated. Pearl eagerly unzipped the front and started to put her legs through. She knew she had to try it on.